is an axle out of Welcome to, I guess this would be part 2 of fixing up this rear blade. The first part I welded on these category 1 3-point pins, and now in this video I'm going to put all the caps on these, which I'll tell you what, when you make something like this, when you put a cap on it, or actually when you don't put a cap on it, on the ends of the steel, it makes it look like you didn't really care much, and it just kind of looks unprofessional. And I'm amazed at whenever this is done and everything is all capped, all the ends of the steel basically have another piece of steel welded on. It's amazing how much better this blade looks. Even just that right there, just putting that one piece on, it just makes it look finished. And there's a couple reasons I did this. Number one was to keep water out, because some of these tubes were open on the top, and then water could get down in there, and then it would rust out the steel, or it could burst it if it froze. It's amazing how much power water has to break steel like that. So that was one reason, to keep water out and keep things from rusting. Another one is to keep mud and other junk from collecting in there. And another reason was to keep bees and stuff, chipmunks, squirrels, whatever the case, keep them from building nests and stuff in there, even birds too. Keep them from building a nest. There was actually a bird's nest in the end of this that I pulled out, so unless it was a mouse nest, that could have been that also. I'm not real sure. There was nothing in it. But here I'm tacking up everything, all the pieces of metal. I did not film cutting any of these pieces of steel out. It's just kind of the same thing over and over and over again. And this video is plenty long enough, so during this process I was also having some issues with my welding helmet. It would not auto darken, so it might need some new batteries. That is my guess, or it needs charge, so I guess I'll have to set it out in the sun and let it charge up. The welder I'm using is a 90 amp Chicago electric welder from Harbor Freight. And I'm just welding on these end caps here. And it's amazing just how much better and finished and professional looking this looks. Even though some people would argue my welds are absolutely horrible. Which is fine, they're entitled to their own opinion, but really nothing's broken. Everything that I've welded has held, and I haven't been very easy on stuff, so something I've wondered whenever I'm finished capping these things. I've always often wondered, how does the pressure, how does that work inside these tubes? Does it just go out through there'll be a small hole somewhere that the weld didn't cover, and that's just how the air will escape? Because, you know, as you cap these, this thing becomes a pressure vessel, and it could burst. I've always wondered how that would work. You know, if you're sealing this all up with steel and weld, you say you didn't have any leaks in it, you know, these pieces of tube now become pressure vessels, so I don't know. I was thinking about that while I was welding this, but nothing happened, so I guess it doesn't really matter all that much. Here I am I'm trying to weld up these cracks that developed on this blade. We'll see how well this blade holds up. Part of me does not want to paint this thing, and I really want to see if we could break this blade. And if we can't break it, then I would paint it. But if we do break it, then I can pretty easily, somewhat easily fix it. You know, re-weld another piece of steel onto the back of this. I am finishing the other spot now, and I'll tell you what, it really helps when you put the ground clamp on when you're welding. You know, obviously the welder has to make a complete circuit, and if it's not making a complete circuit, it's not going to make an arc. But I had to alternate the ground clamp in between these two pieces because there's not a good enough ground in the center pivot. So here I'm cutting out this would be the last piece, the last patch that I did on the very end. This is actually a pretty big piece of steel. I generally buy my welding wire in packages of 20 pounds, so they're each a 10-pound spool that goes into the machine. And a 10-pound spool lasts me probably, I don't know, 6 months maybe. It really depends on the projects that I'm doing. Like on this project, there was a ton of welding that I did on this project. Between putting the 3-point pins on all the patches, fixing the bent blade, or those cracks in the blade, I also have to fix that cutting edge. The split on the tube, and it was just really a lot of welding. I burned through a lot of welding wire doing this. I did have the over temp on the welder kick on 3 or 4 times, and you know, they say you can weld for 2 minutes maxed out, and then you have to let the machine rest for 8 minutes. You can weld for a total of 2 minutes maxed out, and then you have to let the machine rest for 8 minutes. So it's a 10-minute total time span. So here we're trying to figure out how to weld this bottom piece. On the patch below, or I guess here it would be above the center pivot, and there's not much room in there, so I actually got some of my felling wedges for chainsaw milling and tree cutting, and I actually use it to spread they have a gap in there, so it's not a tight fit, it's a loose fit, and I figured those would work to pound those in, and then I can put this piece in. But I'll tell you what, for $100 for this welder, this thing seems to do pretty good. I know learning to weld on this machine is not the easiest, you know, trying to get all the settings and stuff right, but when you have a Hobart, a Miller, Lincoln, whatever the case may be, even a 220 volt machine, a new one, that do all the presets and stuff for you, that's pretty nice, and you know, the arc is really smooth and whatnot. That would be really nice to have, but they're kind of expensive, and you know, I need other things before I need another welder. You know, this thing pretty much does everything that I need it to do. I know some people say I don't have enough power and probably don't get enough of penetration whenever I'm welding, but you know, I'm kind of doing the best that I can with what I have. So let's see, I'm trying to move this blade once again. There was a couple of welds that had been cut on those 2 pieces of steel, so I was sure to grind those down because I'm trying to eliminate getting cut on this thing. I stepped on a nail. When was that? We were cleaning out the back barn, and I stepped on a nail, probably approaching a month ago already. And it went through my shoe and into my foot, and I'll tell you what, that did not feel good whatsoever. And we were right at I guess you're supposed to get a tetanus shot every, was it 5 to 10 years, or 10 years or something? And I was right at the max for the previous tetanus shot I had, so I had to go and get another one. So I know for the next 10 years, if I get cut by something rusty, it's no big deal. You know, I just, clean the wound or whatever and put a band-aid on it and go back to work. But anyways, this is the pin that we use. This was that lawnmower axle. I welded a washer on, and then I welded a collar on top of that. And I'm putting the handle on now. I'll tell you what, it's pretty satisfying to do stuff like this. For whatever reason, I really enjoy doing this kind of work. It's not the easiest, but it's really enjoyable for me, seeing the fruits of my labor, kind of go into something like this. The previous guy that built this is a Ford blade, C-F-O-R-D. So the blade part is Ford, and then the rest of this is homemade. And I also think maybe even this part here is homemade too. But I've got all the caps in. One there, one there, one there. There is one at the center pivot, and then there's also one up underneath at the end of this tube here. I've got the 3-point pins in, and those are all pretty much as tight as I could get them. The only thing that I had to pay for this was these 2 pins, one here and one there, and then this pin here. The rest of this stuff I had. This is an axle out of a mower transmission that was junk, and I had all the steel, but I just used a washer. I welded the washer on to the shaft here at approximately right where I would like it to be. And then I fully welded around the washer, and then I welded, tack welded this collar on. And then I also put on a handle, and it is not the straightest thing in the world, but you know what? It'll work. And boy, I'll tell you, I got a ton of penetration on here. Wow, that's hot still. This is blue, and then there's bluing down in here also. But pretty cool, I guess this would be the hottest part. So this is almost like a whitish, and then blue, purple, red, orange, maybe something like that. I think that's pretty neat. But all in all, I hope this blade's worth it. They had hit something with it and kind of bent the middle in here, but it's free, and I mean, I'm not really going to turn down free, but it looks pretty good. I guess all that's left now is to hook it up to the 8N, which I might do in this video, maybe not. I don't really know. I also welded the cutting edge back together, and same thing, cap these, and then also put these brackets on. But that weld right here is probably one of my best ones, or this one here. And one of these sides, I wasn't comfortable. Yeah, this one. This weld here looks a lot worse. But you know what? I've never really had any welds break with using this welder. This is the 90 amp flux core wire welder from Harbor Freight. I am having some problems with it. It seems to, I don't know what the issue is, but it seems to just randomly stop. Like the wire feed stops and the whole machine shuts down. So I don't know what the issue is with it now. This has been a really good welder. I put almost 50 pounds of wire through it, so I've been really using it an awful lot, for projects and stuff like this. But that's been a great little welder, and I know some people are going to say, oh, now's your chance to upgrade, and that would be nice, but this welder pretty much does everything that I need it to do. Again, I really haven't had any welds break, other than I had some welds crack on the brush hog because I was using, for whatever reason, I put multipass welding wire in this machine, and this is only meant for single pass welding wire. So, you know, I did multiple passes on it, and it just wouldn't melt the wire like it should, and it was just, it just didn't work that good. So, I don't know. So I switched back to the E71 TGSO, gasless flux core single pass, and I've used it for multiple passes. I know they say you're not supposed to, but on the multi-pass welding wire, I did multiple passes on that, and I had huge sections of that just crack. So I've never had any welds crack other than with that, and you know, these things, this should all hold fine. I forget whose idea it was, my brother's idea or my idea, but whoever it was a good idea. We're going to put a jack on this blade, and it's also, of course, it's made out of steel, and it's just two pieces of pipe that slide together. One piece of pipe is welded onto the frame for the blade, and then the other piece of pipe slides down, and then you just put a pin through it, and that's pretty much the jack system that we've come up with for this. And I'll tell you what, it actually works really well. We're using it right now, and I'm really happy we did this. It'll make hooking and unhooking this thing a lot easier. Without a jack, this top piece here would just flop onto the ground, and then it would not be easy to pick it up and get the 3-point arms and stuff wrapped around it, and it's just not something I'd want to do. Having this jack on here will make hooking and unhooking this implement 10 times easier. So it's sort of the same principle as the pin. I cut the pieces of pipe to length. The distance from the bottom of the frame where the 3-point pins are to the bottom of the blade straight down is about 13 inches. So that's what I made that measurement as. My brother measured it, and you had to do a little bit of math and figure out stuff and make sure nothing would hit, and make sure that you got the bolt holes and stuff lined up and the handle doesn't hit stuff. And it was a little bit of trial and error and thinking things through, but we got it done. I used my hole saw kit from Harbor Freight. I used that for a round piece of steel to put on the bottom so the pipe doesn't sink into the ground. And I put some good heavy welds on this thing to start with so I could see how it'll hold this up, and it seems to hold it up really good for now. It doesn't look like anything's going to hit or rub or whatnot. So I decided to fully weld this thing on, and I really put a ton of weld on this thing, probably a lot more than I needed to, only for the simple fact that I foresee one of us, either my brother or I, will hook this thing up, and we'll forget about the jack, and we'll just leave the jack down, and then we'll start using the blade, and then the pipe will get caught on something and then try to rip it off. So I decided to put a lot of weld on here. I hope we don't do that. I hope we don't rip this thing off, but if we do, I can put on a new one if need be. So just more and more welding, and see, the problem is you have this round pipe on here, and it always takes more weld to weld round pipe to something because you have a kind of a bigger gap to fill, and the wire sticks out further in between the two pieces, so it just takes more time and more welding to put this piece of pipe on here, but I'm really glad we did it. The jack is a really, really nice addition to this. It should really make attaching and detaching this thing a lot easier. It was a really good idea, whose ever idea it was. It was the same thing pretty much as the pin. We also put a handle on top and capped the bottom of it, and it seems to work really good. Seems to do its job like it should. So I am really happy we did this. It's a really great addition to this. I've got to say, everything turned out pretty good. I also put a jack on this thing, made the jack and got the pins on and everything. So I am at 15% battery, so I'm going to have to end this video here. Hope everyone enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more, and hopefully we will see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.